Hello everyone, my name is Anya, and I'm 32 years old. Today, I want to share a story that has shaped my entire life, a story about belonging, rejection, and finding my own voice. It all started in Chicago, the city that became my home, but also the stage for my deepest wounds. I was adopted when I was just a few months old by the Millers, a seemingly perfect family from a well-established neighborhood. They had a beautiful house, a thriving business, and 2 biological children, a son named Ethan and a daughter named Chloe, who were a few years older than me. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect family, but beneath the surface, there was always an unspoken truth. I was different. My skin tone, my hair, my features, they were a constant reminder that I didn't quite fit into their blonde, blue-eyed world. My adoptive parents, Sarah and Richard, were always polite, always providing, but there was a subtle distance, a cautiousness in their affection. It was as if they were performing the role of parents, rather than truly embodying it. I often felt like a guest in my own home. Chloe, my adoptive sister, was particularly adept at making me feel like an outsider. Her snide remarks, disguised as jokes about my exotic looks or my different background, were constant. She'd often say, "You're lucky we chose you," with a condescending smile. Ethan, on the other hand, was mostly indifferent. He was too absorbed in his own world of sports and friends to pay much attention to me, which, in a way, was a small mercy. His neglect felt less painful than Chloe's active disdain. I remember one family dinner when I was about 8, and a relative asked where I really came from. Sarah quickly interjected, saying, "She's ours now," but her tone lacked warmth. It was a statement of possession, not love, and it stung deeply. This subtle othering became the soundtrack of my childhood. Every family photo, every holiday gathering, every casual conversation seemed to reinforce that I was an addition, an asterisk, not an integral part of their narrative. I tried so hard to blend in, to be what they wanted me to be. I excelled in school, I was polite, I avoided conflict, all in a desperate attempt to earn their full acceptance. But it felt like chasing a mirage. The school environment wasn't much better. Kids picked up on the cues from my family, or perhaps they simply saw the obvious differences. I was often the target of whispers and curious stares, sometimes outright bullying. My parents never truly intervened in these situations. They'd offer vague advice like, "Just ignore them," or "Be stronger," but never truly stood up for me. It felt like I was fighting battles alone, even within my own home. I learned to be self-reliant very early on. My room became my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself, away from the subtle judgments and the constant pressure to conform to an image that wasn't mine. Books became my escape. I devoured stories of strong women, of characters who defied expectations and found their own paths. They fueled a quiet fire within me, a determination to prove my worth, not to the Millers, but to myself. Looking back, I realized that their silence, their subtle acts of discrimination, were louder than any shouts. They taught me a harsh lesson about conditional love and the importance of self-acceptance. This foundation of feeling othered would play a crucial role in the biggest turning point of my life, a moment that would ultimately lead to a surprising act of defiance and a profound sense of justice. As I entered my teenage years, the subtle discrimination from my adoptive family began to manifest in more concrete ways. It wasn't just about my appearance anymore. It was about my aspirations, my choices, and my place in their world. My parents had very specific expectations for Ethan and Chloe, prestigious universities, careers in finance or law, and marriages within their social circle. For me, their expectations were noticeably lower, almost an afterthought. When I expressed an interest in art school, a genuine passion of mine, my mother, Sarah, dismissed it immediately. "Art is a hobby, Anya, not a career," she said, suggesting I pursue something more practical like accounting. The implication was clear. I wasn't expected to achieve the same level of success as their biological children. My potential was limited, perhaps because of my origins, or perhaps because they simply didn't see me that way. Chloe, ever the instigator, would often chime in. "You wouldn't want to embarrass the family, would you, Anya? Our name means something." Her words were like tiny cuts, designed to undermine my confidence. I started to notice how they spoke about my biological background, always in hushed tones, almost as if it were a secret or a stain. They never encouraged me to explore my heritage, never offered to help me learn about my roots. It was a constant reminder that my identity was something to be managed, not celebrated. I felt like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit their picture, and they were constantly trying to force me into the wrong spot. One particular incident stands out vividly. During a college fair, my parents spent hours at the booths of Ivy League schools with Ethan and Chloe, discussing their futures with great enthusiasm. When it was my turn, they quickly steered me towards local community colleges, suggesting they were more realistic for me. The contrast was stark, and the message was painfully clear. I felt a profound sense of injustice, a burning desire to prove them wrong, not for their approval, but for my own self-worth. I knew I had to break free from their suffocating expectations. This period was incredibly isolating. I felt trapped between the life they wanted for me and the life I desperately wanted for myself. My dreams felt small and insignificant in their grand scheme. I began to secretly research scholarships and out-of-state universities that aligned with my artistic ambitions. I spent countless nights poring over applications, fueled by a quiet rebellion. My grades were impeccable, my portfolio strong, and I poured all my frustration and determination into my applications. I was building my escape route, brick by painstaking brick. The day I received an acceptance letter from a prestigious art institute in New York with a full scholarship was one of the most exhilarating moments of my life. It was my ticket to freedom. When I told my parents, their reaction was muted, a mix of mild surprise and a hint of disappointment that I hadn't chosen their practical path. But for me, it was a triumph, a silent declaration of independence. Leaving Chicago for New York was like shedding a heavy cloak. The anonymity of the big city was liberating, and for the first time, I felt truly free to explore who I was without the constant scrutiny of the Millers. I thrived in art school, immersing myself in my studies and finding a community of like-minded individuals who celebrated creativity and individuality. It was a stark contrast to the stifling environment I had grown up in. My adoptive parents, however, maintained their distant demeanor. Our calls were infrequent and superficial, mostly revolving around my grades or mundane updates. They never once visited me in New York. Chloe, true to form, would occasionally send passive-aggressive texts, asking if I was still drawing stick figures, or if I had found a rich artist to marry. Her words still stung, but they had less power now. Ethan remained largely out of touch, a ghost in my past. The family ties were unraveling, not with a dramatic snap, but with a slow, steady fraying, piece by piece. During my sophomore year, I decided to delve into my own ancestry, a journey I had always been discouraged from taking. I started with adoption records, piecing together fragments of information about my biological parents. It was a challenging and emotional process, filled with dead ends and unexpected discoveries. I learned about my heritage, my cultural roots, and the vibrant history that was part of who I was. This exploration became a profound source of strength and self-acceptance. It filled a void I hadn't even realized was there, connecting me to a lineage that was authentically mine. My parents, when I cautiously shared my discoveries, reacted with discomfort. "Why dwell on the past, Anya?" my mother asked, her voice laced with an almost palpable unease. "You're a Miller now." Their reaction solidified my understanding. They didn't want me to embrace my full identity. They wanted me to be a blank slate, molded into their image, devoid of my own unique story. This realization, though painful, was also incredibly empowering. It freed me from the need for their approval. I no longer sought their validation, I sought my own truth. After graduation, I decided to stay in New York, building a successful career as a graphic designer, specializing in branding for social impact organizations. My work felt meaningful and aligned with my values. I built a new family of friends, a chosen family who celebrated my strengths, supported my dreams, and saw me for who I truly was, not for who they expected me to be. Years passed, and my connection with the Millers grew even more tenuous. We exchanged holiday cards, but the warmth was absent. They were a distant memory, a chapter one had mostly closed. I had found my peace, my purpose, and my place in the world. The echoes of their silence still lingered sometimes, but they no longer defined me. I was Anya, whole and complete. After years of hard work and dedication in New York, I decided it was time to bring my expertise back to Chicago, but on my own terms. I wanted to build something impactful in the city that had once felt so unwelcoming. I launched my own boutique digital marketing agency, specializing in helping minority-owned businesses and nonprofits amplify their voices. It was a passion project born from my own experiences of feeling unheard. The initial months were challenging, filled with long nights and endless networking. But I was driven by a deep sense of purpose, a desire to create a platform where diverse stories could thrive. My adoptive family was unaware of my return to Chicago or my entrepreneurial venture. I kept my distance, focusing on my business and the new life I was building for myself. I found incredible mentors in the Chicago business community, particularly women of color who had navigated similar paths. Their guidance and support were invaluable, a stark contrast to the lack of encouragement I received growing up. My agency quickly gained a reputation for its innovative strategies and its commitment to social good. We weren't just about profits. We were about making a difference, one client at a time. I hired a diverse team, creating a workplace that valued every individual's unique perspective and background. It was the kind of inclusive environment I had always longed for. Financially, the business flourished beyond my wildest dreams. I invested wisely, expanded strategically, and built a substantial net worth, all through my own hard work and vision. This financial independence was more than just money, it was freedom. It was the ability to make choices without compromise, to live authentically, and to support causes I deeply believed in. I bought a beautiful loft in a vibrant, diverse neighborhood, a space that truly felt like home. It was filled with art, books, and the warmth of genuine connections, a reflection of my true self. My life was full and meaningful. I traveled, pursued new hobbies, and nurtured deep friendships. The scars from my past were still there, but they no longer dictated my present or my future. I often thought about the Millers, not with bitterness, but with a quiet sense of detachment. They were a part of my history, but they no longer held any power over my emotional landscape. I had proven to myself that I was capable, resilient, and worthy, regardless of their past judgments or their inability to see my potential. My success was my own, earned through grit and determination. The empire I built was not just a business, it was a testament to my spirit, a monument to overcoming adversity. It was a quiet triumph, a personal victory that needed no external validation. Little did I know, this carefully constructed world of mine was about to collide with the past in a way I never anticipated, triggered by a single, unexpected piece of news. The news arrived not through a formal invitation, but through a casual conversation with an old acquaintance I ran into at a charity event in Chicago. "Are you going to Chloe's wedding?" she asked, genuinely surprised by my blank stare. My heart sank. Chloe, my adoptive sister, was getting married, and I, Anya, her adoptive sister, hadn't received an invitation. It was a deliberate omission, a clear message that I was still an outsider. The wedding was just a few weeks away, a grand affair planned at a prestigious downtown venue. It was typical of the Millers, a display of wealth and social standing, a meticulously curated event. I felt a familiar sting of rejection, a reminder of all the times I had been excluded, overlooked, or subtly dismissed by them. It was a wound I thought had healed, but it still had the power to ache. My first instinct was to simply ignore it, to continue living my fulfilling life, far removed from their drama. But then, a different thought began to form, a spark of an idea that felt both audacious and empowering. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about years of subtle discrimination, of being treated as less than, of having my identity questioned and my worth diminished. This was my chance to reclaim my narrative. I remembered all the times Chloe had made me feel small, all the times my parents had subtly implied I wasn't quite good enough. This wasn't about revenge. It was about a profound act of justice. I decided then and there that I would attend the wedding, not as an uninvited guest crashing the party, but as someone who was about to deliver a very specific gift. The gift wouldn't be wrapped in paper and ribbon. It would be a revelation, a truth bomb carefully crafted to expose the very prejudices they had harbored against me for so long. I spent days meticulously planning how I would execute this. It had to be impactful, undeniable, and delivered at the precise moment to have the maximum effect. I consulted with my closest friend, Maya, a brilliant lawyer who had become like a sister to me. She listened patiently, her eyes widening as I laid out my audacious plan. "Anya, this is brilliant," she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "It's not just a gift, it's a statement. It's your truth, finally unveiled." Her support solidified my resolve. The plan was complex, requiring careful coordination and a touch of theatricality. It involved leveraging my professional skills and my newfound resources in a way they would never expect. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. This wasn't about bitterness, it was about empowerment, about finally standing tall and asserting my worth in their presence. The unsent invitation became my catalyst, the spark that ignited a long-dormant fire. I was no longer the quiet, overlooked girl. I was Anya, and I was about to make a statement they would never forget. With Maya's help, I began to meticulously craft my gift. It wasn't something I could buy in a store. It was a carefully orchestrated presentation designed to reveal a truth they had ignored for decades. My plan revolved around a digital presentation, something I was an expert at creating. It would be concise, visually striking, and delivered at a moment when it would command everyone's attention. The content of the presentation was crucial. It wasn't about airing grievances or making accusations. Instead, it would subtly highlight the stark contrast between their expectations for me and my actual achievements. I gathered data, my company's financial growth, the prestigious clients we served, the social impact initiatives we championed, and the awards we had quietly received. All verifiable, undeniable facts. I also included subtle visual cues from my past, old family photos where I was always on the periphery, juxtaposed with images of my thriving business and diverse team. The message would be clear without needing words. The challenge was how to get this presentation seen at the wedding. I couldn't just walk in and plug in a laptop. It needed to be discreetly integrated into the event's existing technology. Maya, with her legal acumen and strategic mind, suggested a brilliant workaround. She discovered that the wedding venue offered a digital guest book, where attendees could share photos and messages on screens throughout the reception. This was my entry point. I developed a sophisticated, yet seemingly innocuous, digital file that would appear to be a heartfelt congratulatory message, but subtly embed my presentation. I knew Chloe and her family would be too busy basking in their self-importance to scrutinize every digital submission. The file would be programmed to activate at a specific, opportune moment during the reception. The element of surprise was paramount. It had to be unexpected, a sudden, undeniable presence that would disrupt their carefully constructed facade of perfection. I practiced the timing, refined the visuals, and ensured every detail was flawless. This wasn't just a presentation. It was a performance, years in the making, culminating in a single, powerful moment. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of anticipation. I felt a strange mix of calm and exhilaration, knowing that I was about to execute a plan that had been brewing for a lifetime. This gift was my way of taking control of my own narrative, of showing them that their perception of me was fundamentally flawed. It was a quiet act of defiance, a testament to my resilience. I wasn't seeking their approval anymore, but I was certainly going to ensure they finally saw the woman I had become, the woman they had consistently underestimated and dismissed. The day of Chloe's wedding arrived, a crisp autumn afternoon in Chicago. I dressed simply but elegantly, choosing an outfit that made me feel confident and poised, rather than trying to blend in. I arrived at the grand ballroom discreetly, blending into the crowd of hundreds of guests. The air was thick with the scent of expensive flowers and the hum of polite conversation. The Millers were everywhere, radiating an air of self-satisfaction. Chloe, in her elaborate gown, looked every bit the picture of a privileged bride, oblivious to the storm brewing. I found a table at the back, observing the scene, my heart thrumming with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. This was it, the culmination of years of quiet struggle and hard-won triumph. As the reception progressed, the digital guestbook screens flickered with photos and pre-recorded messages from various guests. My carefully prepared file was uploaded anonymously, disguised as a generic well-wish. The moment arrived during a lull in the speeches, just after the main course had been served. The lights dimmed slightly, drawing attention to the large screens positioned around the room. Suddenly, my presentation began to play. It started subtly, with a beautiful, generic animation, then slowly transitioned. The first slide was a simple, elegant title, A Legacy Unseen. A hush fell over the room as people realized this wasn't just another congratulatory message. The visuals were stunning, the transitions seamless, and the content began to unfold. It showed graphs of my company's revenue growth, images of our prominent clients, and snippets of news articles highlighting our social impact work. Each slide was a quiet, undeniable fact. Then came the more personal touch, a subtle overlay of those old family photos, where I was always in the background, almost an afterthought, juxtaposed with my professional achievements. The faces of the Millers, initially smiling and relaxed, began to shift. Sarah and Richard exchanged bewildered glances. Chloe's jaw dropped, her eyes fixed on the screen, her smug smile vanishing. The final slide appeared, a simple, elegant image of my company's logo, followed by a single, powerful line. My gift to you, the truth of what you chose not to see. Silence hung heavy in the air. Hundreds of eyes turned towards the Millers. Then slowly, some began to search the room, wondering who was behind this stunning display. I remained at my table, a quiet observer, feeling a profound sense of liberation. The gift had been delivered, the truth unveiled, and their speechless faces were all the validation I needed. The aftermath of my gift at Chloe's wedding was immediate and palpable. The reception effectively ground to a halt, the festive atmosphere replaced by a stunned silence and hushed whispers. The Millers, particularly Sarah and Richard, looked utterly bewildered, their carefully constructed facade of perfection crumbling before their eyes. Chloe was visibly shaken, her face pale. I saw them scanning the room, trying to identify the source of the presentation, their expressions a mix of confusion, anger, and a dawning realization. But I remained a quiet, almost invisible presence. Eventually, the venue staff, clearly instructed by a flustered Richard, managed to cut the feed to the screens, but the damage was done. The message had landed, loud and clear. I quietly slipped out of the ballroom, a profound sense of peace washing over me. There was no need for confrontation, no need for words. The truth, delivered with precision, was enough. Walking out into the cool Chicago night, I felt an incredible lightness. The weight of years of unspoken prejudice, a feeling like an outsider, had finally lifted from my shoulders. This wasn't about revenge, it was about self-liberation. It was about reclaiming my narrative and asserting my worth in a way that was undeniable, even to those who had refused to see it. The next few days were filled with calls and texts from distant relatives and acquaintances who had been at the wedding. Most expressed shock, some offered apologies for the Millers' behavior, and many congratulated me on my success. The Millers themselves remained silent. No calls, no texts, no attempts at explanation or reconciliation. Their silence, once a source of pain, now felt like a confirmation of my triumph. My chosen family, Maya and my closest friends, celebrated with me. It wasn't a celebration of their discomfort, but a toast to my resilience, my strength, and my unwavering spirit. I continued to pour my energy into my business, which, perhaps ironically, gained even more visibility after the wedding incident. Clients were drawn to our story, our authenticity, and our mission. I also dedicated more time to supporting organizations that champion diversity and inclusion, ensuring that other young people, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, felt seen and valued. My life was authentically mine, built on a foundation of self-acceptance and purpose. The girl who was once overlooked and underestimated had not just survived, she had thrived. The gift was not just for them, it was for me. It was a tangible representation of my journey, a powerful reminder that my worth was never, and would never be, defined by someone else's inability to see it. If you're watching this and feel unseen, unheard, or underestimated, remember Anya's story. Your value is inherent, your potential limitless, and your truth will always find a way to shine.